Hello and welcome to the Ourdadsstamps YouTube channel, where we talk about all things related to stamps and stamp collecting. My name's Pete West and I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to get regular updates of new content.
Hello again from Ourdadsstamps. Yesterday I received a package of stamps that I bought from auction recently, and for today's video I thought we could do an unpacking and see what I've got. I bought these through an auction house called Ourdadsstamps, which I've started to use a fair bit to buy the stamps that I wish to sell on. They seem to have a better range of high value stamps in sets, so I can buy a good quality collection from them rather than through the likes of eBay, Delcamp and the other sites. Another advantage of them is that they group all the stuff together. So if you want to buy French stamps, you look on a certain day. If you want to buy German stamps, you look on a certain day. And like me, I want to buy British Commonwealth stamps. That generally finishes on a Sunday evening. And within that grouping, there's probably only 60, 70 different lots. So it's much easier to look through and decide what you want to buy. They also have a facility where there are unlimited photographs. So I get an image of every single stamp that I'm going to buy, although we will talk about that a little bit later. And the third advantage for me with Ourdadsstamps is it tends to be mostly European sellers. And so I'm not stuck with long delays in the post, import duties, taxes and such like. So it does have advantages. So let's have a look what I've got then. This particular lot I bought for just over €150, including postage and selling fees, etc. And I really only bought this lot for the first page. It's quite a small pack, there's not a huge amount of stamps, but the first page of the stamps is from New Brunswick. Now, New Brunswick, in case you don't know, was one of the original territories of Canada. And there were several territories that issued stamps independently originally, among them British Columbia, Vancouver Island, the colony of Canada, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. In round about the late 1860s, 1870, they joined together to form the Dominion of Canada, although Newfoundland carried on till 1949. So these stamps are from early Canada, if you like, from New Brunswick. And the first page consists of 6 stamps, which, if they are in perfect condition, are worth quite a considerable amount of money and will certainly pay back what I paid for the whole lot. So if we look closely, the one at the top is catalogue value of about £400. Now that doesn't look too bad to me, and actually on the selling description the vendor showed images of the front and back. So yeah, that's not too bad. The margins are a little bit tight and that's the only thing that would detract from it, but happy with that one. And the group of 5 at the bottom of the page are of one set, and each one of those is probably worth £30–40 in perfect condition. The bottom 3 look as though they're mint, and this is where I've noticed the problems arise. And this is one of the pitfalls of buying from auction houses, where you can't physically see the stamp. And if you're buying an individual stamp, then you should get a very clear description and a very accurate description. These stamps were just sold as a set, so you make your own mind up about what it is. And as I said, the bottom 3 look as though they're mint. And what's actually the case is the 2-cent orange and the 5-cent green are mint no gum, which greatly detracts from the value of those stamps, unfortunately. And they're worth less in that condition than they would be either mint or used. Mint no gum is obviously where it looks mint, and in all intents and purposes it is mint, but there's no gum on the back. And that can happen for several reasons. Firstly, it could have actually been used on an envelope, but just not franked. That doesn't often happen with old stamps, but it can happen, and it could be that this is one of those examples. Or it could be that the postmark has been removed somehow or another. These stamps look quite good from the front, quite clean, so I doubt that's happened. And what's more likely to have happened is that they've been stuck somewhere, whether deliberately or accidentally. Sometimes the stamps stick to the stamp pages, and the only way to get them off is to soak them off. So that's a possibility. Another possibility is, although again unlikely in this case, in tropical countries you quite often get discoloration of the gum, which turns brown and starts toning. And one of the remedies for the discoloration is to wash it, but of course that removes the gum. As I said, that's unlikely for a Canadian stamp. Anyway, so unfortunately these two stamps are not worth what I thought they would be, and it's just one of those things. The third stamp is also a bit of a problem. It does have gum on it, but it has been very, very heavily hinged. So you're left with a heavily hinged stamp, which is not as bad as one with no gum, but it does detract from the value. Or I have the choice of trying to remove the hinge, which can be done if carefully, but it will disturb the gum. So again, it is a mint stamp. It does have gum on it, but it's not as valuable as I would have liked. However, these things happen. I'm still okay so far with the first stamp, so let's see where we go from there. This second page has just one stamp from British Columbia, and everything looks fine on that. It's worth over £100, so yeah, very nice. It does look to be a bit trimmed down one side, but that could be their version of a wing margin, so I'm not overly concerned, although obviously it won't be as good as one with perfect perforations all round. But yeah, that's okay. And on this page there are some more Canadian stamps from early Canada of the Queen Victoria and Edward VII. And again, these would appear mint at first sight, but a couple of them are actually mint with no gum. So once again, the value is not as much as I would have hoped for, and highlights the pitfalls of buying a collection from an online auction house. Looking through the pages, the rest of the group is really a mixture of quite old stamps, quite nice stamps. Nothing in there of huge value, but some will need further investigation. The next page has a load of Jamaican stamps at the top, which says pineapple alongside. That's the watermark for the early Jamaican stamps. And if these are all genuine pineapple watermarks, which I've no reason to suspect they're not, they're £20–30 each, so a decent amount there, and there are several of them. So a closer look at the Jamaican stamps does confirm that they're pineapple watermarks, which means, yeah, that little group is quite a decent set. Looking at the Hong Kong stamps, the King George VI goes up to $1, and the Queen Elizabeth goes up to $2, but used, none of those have any real value. However, the Queen Victoria stamps, it would depend on the watermark. And looking at these, I've actually come across the other aspect of buying collections off the internet, in that these appear to be stamps with no watermark. And certainly the 12-cent greenish one is mint, a very nice looking mint stamp. If it is the version with no watermark, that's a £600 stamp there. So it could be that stamp alone has made this buy worthwhile. Hopefully I've made the right decision there, and we'll let you know. Similarly with the Indian stamps, I would need to have a closer look at those. They're going to take a little while to sort out. There's several different watermarks and perforations, but they could be worth a fair bit, so yeah, not too bad. On this page, nothing that really stands out. There's a stamp from Van Diemen's Land, which on the right hand side. That's actually what's now called Tasmania, and was a very early stamp of theirs, which does certainly have some value. It's not one I know a lot about, so I'll need to look into that. But yeah, that has potential as well, so happy with that. And here we have a mix of older and newer stuff. The Cyprus stamps they look quite low value, fairly common stamps, so I'm not holding out any huge hopes from there. The St Helena stamps are interesting. For some reason, and I really don't understand why this was done, all the early St Helena stamps had 6p value, but they were printed in different colours and then overprinted with the value. So the red one is a 1p overprinted on the 6p stamp. The green one is a halfpenny overprinted on the 6p stamp. The yellow one is twopence overprinted on 6p stamps. It makes no sense why they printed them all as 6p, why they didn't just leave the value blank. But it's interesting anyway. And value-wise, it depends on the size of the overprint, because several different typesettings were used, and that will need carefully looking at and carefully measuring to see whether there's any huge value there or whether they're the lower value one. And on this page there's a whole load of stamps from Trinidad, or Trinidad and Tobago, which again look to be the lower value ones without a huge amount of catalogue value. There is a British Guiana stamp in there, the orange one, which is imperforated. Now that could be interesting. However, on closer inspection there's a big tear from the top downwards, so that's not going to be worth anything at all really, which is a shame. And again, it's something that doesn't show up on all the images. If you were buying it individually, obviously it would be described as such, but when it's part of a collection, then it's just part of a collection. So there we are then. All in all, I'm reasonably happy with what I've bought. Early disappointments have been made up by the discovery of a couple of more interesting stuff that I hadn't realised when I first looked through. So yeah, it's always nice for me. I'm always excited when a pack arrives, because, as I said before, although you get to see every single stamp, until you actually have them in your hand and look at them closely and identify exactly which stamp it is, you don't really know what you've got. And sometimes there's some nice surprises, sometimes there's some disappointments, but it always makes it interesting, and for me that's what keeps stamping fun. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see you again in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. Don't forget you can visit my online stores at eBay and Delcamp under the name of Ourdadsstamps, where I have over 2,000 items for sale. Please join us again in 2 weeks' time for another edition of Ourdadsstamps podcast.